I also saw your story where you were born and kind of how you evolved as a human and as an entrepreneur. That was something really inspiring to me. I thought of it as like, if Alex can do it, why can't I? Like, I have zero excuses. There's so many opportunities. Like, e-commerce is still in its infancy stage. If you think small, you make excuses, the business will reflect that, as opposed to you thinking large and ambitious. It all comes down to perspective at the end of the day. Like, limit the excuses and limiting beliefs, and I believe anything is possible.
Hey guys, Alex Fedotoff here, and today we have an amazing guest, good friend, Bretten Hadley. He's a client at Elite Mastermind, and we just finished an amazing event here in Budapest, and we just want to talk e-commerce. Bretten is doing e-commerce for the last few years, scaled his business to multiple seven figures while still in college. And so he'll tell his story, he'll tell some major learnings he had along the way, and excited to learn from you and have a good chat.
Likewise, let's get into it.
Thank you so much for joining me. So, how did you start your e-commerce journey? I know that you were like in college. I want to hear the whole story.
Let's go all the way back. So, always wanted to be an entrepreneur in high school. You know, starting in fourth grade, I've always been selling something. Like, my friends would make these cool duct tape wallets, and I'd try to be the salesman for them. Sell them for $20. Was umpiring. Like, always try to do like entrepreneurial like things. Like I said, was always selling. Had a coaching business. Around my senior year of high school.
What did you coach?
Baseball. So I played baseball my whole life. Got pretty good at that. But then, retired at the age of, what was that, 17, 18? So did a coaching business. This guy, only guy I've ever worked for, he didn't pay me my $400 at the time, and that was like detrimental. I was like, man, how could you do this to me, right? So I took a couple of his clients, built my own little like coaching business, and so I learned like leverage, right? I learned that like, I could just do this with 2 clients for 2 hours and make more in 2 hours than I did that entire week. So I was like, okay, it kind of got me thinking like that, right? And then did this all the way up until my freshman year of college. My first semester was successful. I was like growing the business a little bit, and then 3 weeks into my second semester, COVID happened. So that kind of hit the world by storm, and overnight that business was done. And so it really taught me like how fragile, a business could be, right? And so, like I said earlier, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. So I was like, what's a pandemic-proof business model, right? So that was like one of my criterias. So I was just thinking about it, had a certain amount of cash to allocate towards
how much?
Business investments. I think around $2,000 to $3,000.
Okay.
So I mean something, right? Like for a hungry college student, it was okay, right? I was getting by. Wanted a pandemic-proof business model, right? Everyone's quarantined. I was like, selling online sounds like a good idea, right? As anyone would have thought back in that day. So I was just researching, watched probably YouTube videos for a straight year. Like, I just really wanted to, with minimal resources on the money side of things and a ton of time, I was able to identify my resources I was able to allocate, right? So short amount of cash, a lot of time. So I really spent time learning the craft, and I got good at identifying good and bad information pretty quickly, because I probably knew every YouTuber at the time, emerging and, pretty, vetted. So watched YouTube videos, and then ran my first store. It was a decent product, solved a good problem, but I didn't know how to market, right? And I also bought the inventory in bulk.
Oh.
So yeah, spent like, I had $3,000 at the time, now that I remember. Spent 2 of it, on the inventory. I'll even say it because it was a great problem, and I had like a good mindset. It was like a ultraviolet light sterilization wand. So like at the time, people were too scared to like touch a doorknob or touch an elevator button or like groceries, right? So it's a wand that you can sterilize objects before you touch it. So that kind of solved a good problem during C19. I don't know what I can and can't say in terms of monetization, but that didn't work out too well. Didn't know the marketing side. I was able to identify like pros and cons, what I did right versus wrong, right? So then I had, $800 because I spent another $200 on like Shopify, ads, stuff like that, blah, blah, blah. And then, so I had $800 and really had to think, smart, right? I had one more shot at this. I was like, $800, we got to make it happen. And so I had this good idea, and I worked hard at it. still in school, doing Zoom school, and it worked out. And that's the business we're doing today. So that's, I mean, that was a long story short.
So you launched the business that you're currently running, right? And like last Q4, you did 1 million months. This Q4, you'll probably just blow past through it. Mm-hmm. That business you started was $800.
Correct. Yeah. So I only spent 300 of it. So that time I really thought like, pretty strategically. I was like, okay, I need to make this work. Last time I did this wrong. I did this right. Here's what I'm going to focus on. I really focused on the marketing side of things. And that went really well off the jump. Spent $50 on ads, tripled it, so I was like, holy shit, like this could work, right? And so, yeah, that's like the business we're still working on today. I've, like take a long-term approach with things, don't like to be testing new products in different niches. Like I really like to hone in on my craft and execute it for the long term and hopefully get a nice exit one day.
Wow, this is very nice. Like your thought process, like you always had the thought process like analytical, because I think it's, you've done something, right? And then you kind of like evaluate, okay, so what you could have possibly done better. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people, they're just starting a business, let's say they launch a product, it doesn't work, and there's not much that they learn from it, right? So how did you develop that skill set of like analyzing the data and identifying what you could have done better?
Yeah, it's a great question. At the time, there still is, there's an e-com civil war, right? It was general store, rapid testing versus branded approach, right? You were one of the pioneers in that front. And that kind of approach just really resonated with me. It just made more sense, right? So that's kind of the approach not only that I enjoyed, but just made the most logical sense, right? And like I said earlier, like I only had a certain shot at this, right? I want to execute my tests with full confidence, right? Like any statistician would. They would, they want to perform tests with 99% confidence, right? So that their results come out with confidence, right? So I didn't want to, if it were to fail, I wanted to be like, okay, I executed it to the best of the ability. The market just didn't respond favorably towards it, right? Mm-hmm. I would rather go out like that than, just rapid fire. Then you wouldn't learn anything, right? So that was kind of the approach I took.
So you did a lot of research about the niche, the products, kind of like what was your thought process like, say with that current brand that you're running, when you first launched it, like how did you see that was a good idea or a good product? Like what criteria did you use?
Yeah, so I mean, just with the nature of the world at the time, there are a lot of, emotions, isolation, right? So I pursued the gifting niche because I thought during that time you could really reconnect with loved ones, not in a physical, intimate way because you couldn't see them. Like I got the idea from not seeing my grandma for a year and a half, and we were quarantined, that whole thing, and then I saw her for the first time, probably from we're social distance from like here to that wall over there, and her name is Honey. I was like, bye, honey. I wish I could give you a hug right now. So like that kind of like. Gifting to someone in a way where you couldn't see them at the time, like that kind of like intimacy in a way, that kind of like, showing that you're still there for someone even though you can't see them, like that kind of like resonated with me. So with that kind of philosophy that I got, I learned like in a way to solve like emotional problems in a way. So you wouldn't think as like gifting as like you could solve problems, right? You solve the problem of needing to gift someone. That's the way people take with it. And that kind of produces seasonality, right? So you need a gift during Christmas, right? You go sell a Christmas gift or like a gift for Christmas, right? But the way I saw it was like you can sell like problems, emotional problems in the market that will limit the seasonality of your business. And so I've always like thought like that. That was like, fortunately, the first kind of angle I took with it. And so like after quarantine ended, I really pivoted towards that emotional problem, especially within the gifting niche. And that just really helped us generate sustainable results year round. And so that was one of the best decisions and kind of thought processes I had.
Because you're in the gifting niche, and for those of you guys who don't know, like gifting niche is, it's seasonal. It's usually Q4, very Q4 heavy, and you still have, you have tremendous Q4s, but you manage to because of the angles adjustments, right? Like new product development, you managed to maintain like stable sales throughout the year, which is pretty rare in a gifting niche.
Yeah, correct. I mean, there's a few people in the community who, used to sell, jewelry, and they were having that problem. But like I said, I really wanted to take that approach. Like, how you say, solve problems. Like, it's not the problem you're solving, it's the emotions derived from that solution, right? So it's like knee pain, right? You feel better physically, but mentally you're confident, you're able to walk with your grandkids again. It's like the emotions that derive from that solution is actually the value, right? So I kind of took that same thought process and took that approach towards the gifting niche. And that really paid dividends and gave trajectory and less seasonality to my business. And that's something that, I take moving forward.
You have very interesting story because you started running the business while still in college, and there could be people watching this, or listening, who are still in college, and they might be thinking about business, like they kind of like, maybe they even like playing around with starting a business. You actually started the business in college. You managed to grow it while in college. And now as you graduated, obviously you just took it to like totally like new heights. But it's very fascinating, like what was kind of your thought process when you started the business? Like you just didn't care about like college at all? Like you just wanted to get the business off the ground, that was all in your mind? Or what was the motivation for you to not like still be in college and running a business versus like just quitting the college and focusing on business full time?
Yeah, I mean, I saw it this way. Like, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, so I would do anything to pursue that, right? I saw, especially with e-commerce, the freedom of it. So during college, I took both routes. Like I allocated my time towards both. Like I got great grades, because my family, my father was the first to graduate from college in our family. And so it was his life goal to provide his kids, with debt-free education, right? So I felt a sense of obligation to him, and, I respect him greatly. So I really wanted to pursue this for him and make him proud. At the same time, also pursue an extracurricular that may, fit towards what I wanted to pursue in life simultaneously, right? So at the time I was like, I will do anything, right? 14-hour days, I also double majored, so I'd taken like 18 units a semester. So I really like tried my best to like make it happen for both my family and what I wanted to pursue afterwards. And kind of stemming into like misconceptions, or to the audience, like someone who's in a similar situation, like, no, it's not too late, and yes, it's possible. I get a lot of, even from friends, they say, oh, you got in early, just like certain things like that. And it's just like, there's so many opportunities. Like e-commerce is still in its infancy stage, and, it's never been more possible. You can either, you can look at things in two ways, right? You can look at, the society and, general economics we live in right now, that you can complain about inflation and the cost of living rising, but you can also look at it from a greater perspective and see that like the opportunities we have now weren't available when my parents were graduating from college, right? You needed a brick and mortar business. You needed to put a loan on a building lease, right? Utilities, expenses, W-2 employees, right? There was substantial risk to that, and limited foot traffic, right? So you're only selling to people who are in the local community, as opposed to e-commerce. You can sell to the entire world, and as long as you provide substantial value, you can succeed, right? And there's opportunities like TikTok Shop and all this. So I really can't express enough to anyone out there who's like was in a similar situation as I was in, to like, please pursue it. Like it'll be, it's a win-win, right? Because you pursue extracurriculars, like people want initiative in this society, right? So if you pursue e-commerce or an extracurricular simultaneously in school, even if it doesn't work out for you, an employer will look at that as like, okay, this guy is different, or this person thinks differently, and really wants to pursue and has ambition, right? And employers love that. So I really think it's a win-win, and that's the way I looked at it.
For sure. So how much money you made, like when you started the business, it started to get some traction? How much money you made the first year?
When I joined ESS, my first year of e-commerce, I was doing.
And you joined ESS in what year?
Either 2021 or 2022. I believe it's 2021. I think I've been here for over 3 years now.
Oh, nice.
So,
thank you.
Yeah, of course, man. Yeah, so I joined in 2021. I was doing around $300 to $500 a day in revenue. So I mean, it was good, yeah, for sure. Like, it was great for a college student, but it wasn't sustainable enough to like pursue that and go all in after college. So I really made that investment into your mentorship program and networking community in 2021.
Wow. So you joined when you were making about like $10,000 per month.
No, I wish. It was around like 3K a month. Yeah, like 3 to maybe 5.
Oh wow.
Right? Yeah. And I mean, yeah. So it was one of my biggest investments at the time.
Why you decided to do it?
Join your program or e-commerce?
You decided, joining the program. I mean, it's like because people have this like belief, right? Like if they're joining in the program, they want to make their money back like right away, or this thing that the results are guaranteed, or they have all of these, like when investing in themselves, they kind of like have all of these expectations, right? And especially if they're just starting out, if they don't see the value of mentorship, of masterminds. So what was that for you that you haven't been making like that much money, right? And you still decided to invest in yourself.
Yeah, I mean, as I said earlier, I spent my first year just like really watching YouTube videos and learning the craft, right? And I was able to identify good versus bad information. Just with your interviews, who you were talking to, associating with in the industry, I could tell right away that what you guys were discussing was very high level and something unique that the industry hadn't seen yet, and quite frankly still really doesn't. So I saw that. I also saw your story and like where you were born and kind of how you evolved as a human and as an entrepreneur. And that was something really inspiring to me. So I thought of it as like, if Alex can do it, why can't I? Like, I have zero excuses, like zero, none at all. Like, I am, native to this country, right? Or I wouldn't say native, but I was born in this country. I know the language. I have zero excuses to communicate and effectively sell a product, right? Like, you took so much risk in your life, and I was like, if you can get to this point, why can't I? So that was my thought process, and that was why I took the leap of faith, to join.
Did it help?
I would say so. I don't know yet. We'll find out, right? Yeah.
No, I appreciate you, and you've been coming to every event. Like for the last 2-3 years, like since we started.
Yeah, 2.5 years. I think New York was the first one I went to. I think that was your second mastermind, if I'm correct. I went to that, and like I said, I was probably doing $300 to $500 a day. Like, I was like stressing, like that airplane ticket, the hotel. I was just like, oh my gosh, I gotta make it work, man. And that was one of the best investments I ever made.
So when you were in college, the first the first year like doing this like in college, like how much money you made?
First year in college, I ended that year, had a decent Q4, had my first 6-figure month, ended at around $360,000 in revenue, $60,000 profit. So I mean, it was definitely, for a college student, amazing, right? I was very, very happy. The investment paid off, whether that's the mastermind or the the networking community. So you made $60,000 just pretty much doing this part-time on top of the college that. Yeah.
Wow. Because I mean, $60,000, I mean, for us, like, it's not a lot of money. Like, as as you grow, like, you see what's possible. Like 60,000, it's like, it's not much. But then for a lot of people, it's like, that's what it make.
Yeah, it's great.
Full time.
For sure. Yeah, it was pretty mind-blowing to me at the time. But I'd also had gone to these, that New York event, and I just saw like what's possible out there. And it really changed my perspective for the better. It really did. So there on out, I just, had limited time. My bottleneck was the limited time I had because I was in college, right? Had to pursue that and, make my family proud. And so that was my bottleneck at the time. Didn't get all the time I wanted to pursue towards business, but I made it work and continued to grow the business.
And that's also like one of the things people say, oh, I don't have enough time, right? And like, I mean, there's an argument, right? Like you also could have said like, I don't have enough time, I'm going to college, right? It's like everyone's going partying and everyone's having a good time. You can say like, yeah, I don't have time. I'll start a business like when I graduate, right?
Yeah.
You didn't waste time.
Yeah, I mean, there's two things for me. One was like the narrative that like college is the best 4 years of your life. I always like heard that narrative in high school, and I was like,
who's saying that? The college?
Everyone. It's so weird. That's like a common like theme, like where I was growing up. Like they just like were so ready to get out and like go live life or whatever that means for 4 years. And like I agree with you, but like I was already stressed about. I kind of had like older brothers, and he had older friends, and I would always talk to them, and he was like, there was a common denominator. I wish I stayed where I lived, so I had like the resources to like be home and like really study and focus more. And B, I wish I'd pursued something. Like I have a lack of freedom now with my job that I don't desire to be at my job. So I saw those things, and it really propelled me forward into like that thought process. So I didn't want to make the excuse I didn't have time, right? You could have made the excuse you didn't know English, right?
Yeah.
So like, everyone has excuses, but it's like at the end of the day, we're all so blessed and fortunate to even be on this planet, and you need to be, if you want it in life, you have to just, push the excuses aside and really, execute to your best ability.
For sure. So next year, first year we made $60,000 in profit. Next year?
That was my junior year in college. I did my first 7-figure revenue year at 20%. So from 60 grand in profit to 200 grand. So that was my junior year in college. I remember taking my finals, still Zoom. And we had these proctored exams, and you have to like show you throwing your phone or like putting your phone like away so you couldn't like, obviously cheat. And like I was just like taking the exam, like watching the Shopify notifications, like getting all these dopamine hits. I just remember that so vividly, and it was just like, oh, it's such an amazing experience, and like it's surreal at the same time. So also in those Zoom lessons, just like kind of like working a little bit, focusing, taking notes where I can. So yeah, that was a fun time in life. And
that was second year in business,
Correct.
Still in college,
Correct.
part-time.
Yeah.
And then the third year?
That was my senior year in college. So I graduated in May. So I was doing.
That was last year, right?
Correct. Yeah, I'm a full year out now. So I graduated, in May of last year, and I finished the year at 2.5 million at 20% again. So 60 to 200 to 500. My first year out of college. So that was amazing, obviously. In that year we hit our first 7-figure month in December. And so that was really eye-opening to me and kind of gave me a new perspective of what's possible.
And, the interesting thing about like your business is kind of like how you think about business, right? I think we had a few conversations about this, like the way you kind of analyze, like, for example, how to turn a seasonal business into non-seasonal. Mm-hmm. Like adjusting all these different angles, potentially introducing some new products to kind of like appeal to people, like even like if it's not holiday season, if it's not like Q4. Mm-hmm. That mindset, I think, is what differentiates, kind of like evaluating the competitive environment and looking where you have the edge, right? So either it's on the marketing, is it on product development, is it on the creative side, is it, on some distribution channels, organic, and identifying all of these little things, how you can be competitive compared to other people. And I think that's, that's a trait of, all of the successful entrepreneurs. They look at it like as a war, almost kind of. Okay, so what are my advantages? Or a fight, okay, if I'm short, I probably cannot strike very well. Okay, I probably have to grapple, right?
Yeah, right.
So, do you study a lot of business books? Like, where do you get kind of like different perspectives on the business, how we can improve?
I mean, this kind of circles back to the networking events, right? I got a lot of value from those, for two main ways. And one of them is when you talk to people who are at a higher level and you ask them questions, you can really reframe your mindset and have paradigm shifts based off of how they answer your question, because you are able to psychologically break down how they answer that question, right? So, which kind of reframes your mindset. So then you can kind of like analyze it, be like, okay, he took my question, answered it like this, and that. So that, and then you find common denominators between, high level people. And a lot of them would say you need to do stuff different. Like, a lot of people in e-commerce, go the red ocean approach. They compete with each other, like they compete for market share. But if you just take the same product and go a different way, you're creating an area with minimal competition, right? And you can really, get your foot in the door easier, right? So I just, being in the networking events really helped me reframe, my mindset, and also listening to your YouTube videos even before I was in there in the networking event. So,
but it's one thing to have access to YouTube videos or podcasts or networking events, and it's another thing to actually take the feedback and kind of like change your behavior in some way, right? So it's most people, everyone has access to YouTube. It's a free platform. Anyone can watch these videos. But there's only a few people that take that information and modify, how they operate their business, change their strategy based on kind of like what they're hearing. Or if someone, let's say if they're asking for feedback from someone, actually implementing that feedback.
Correct.
Because a lot of people, like you tell them something and like, okay, here's what I would do, bam, 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 bam. And they're like, yeah, but.
Yeah. And what you just said really resonates with me because, the New York event, I met Carl Weisha, and he was one of the first people to present. And he was talking about, universal characteristics to increase your conversion rate, right? So he talked about having all information above the fold, loading page speed, right? And so I went back to my hotel room that night and I implemented those changes, sent him a screenshot 2 days later of like the 50% increase in conversion rate. And so, that really got me to connect with Carl. And so from there, I made a testimonial for him for his YouTube channel because, his advice got me great results. And then, because of the testimonial I gave him, he audited my business and sent me a detailed report of the changes he would implement. And so from there, I hired a developer and we went ahead and took away our website off Gem Pages and made a completely custom Shopify theme. It was, that was one of our big investments, 2 years ago. And that was extremely valuable. Like that just set the trajectory of our business.
How much your conversion rate has increased?
Oh man. Yeah. Yesterday is a 3.8%. So extremely profitable. Around over 30% net margins, around like 34% yesterday. So
wow.
We can get into later about like what changes I've made this year that have been successful. But
yeah, we'll talk about that behind the scenes.
Yeah, behind the scenes.
It's interesting though, like the speed of execution, speed of implementation, right? Mm-hmm. You got it done in 2 days. Mm-hmm. For some people, it takes 2 fucking years.
Yeah. It shouldn't, right? Especially easy changes like that, right? Like all you need to go is, there's a million people who can do that. So it's like, you need to realize that and execute, right? Like why wait? So, especially, it was in September when we were in New York. And so that was right before Q4. So I had to execute. And I also, wanted to meet people. I was the smallest guy in the room, youngest guy in the room. And I just really wanted to, get out there and immerse myself and really be uncomfortable. Right. So, that's definitely, something that helped me.
How did you know that you have to immerse yourself and be uncomfortable? Like,
well, I realized that like putting myself in uncomfortable positions, like pursuing business and like, I don't know, it made me feel at my best, right? Like there was times in life where I wasn't fully satisfied with myself or who I looked at in the mirror. And ultimately, I think that was me not pursuing the best version of myself. So I really, there's a time in my life, where I wasn't necessarily the happiest. So I really, from there on out, I really wanted to just do everything I could, pursue everything to the best of my ability and pursue uncomfortable situations, to see what I'm made of, right? So that was kind of the approach I took.
Interesting. So you consciously choose uncomfortable kind of like environment where, let's say, like you said, coming into the room where you're like the guy like doing the smallest numbers.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
And it's like, it's kind of a little bit like,
nerve-wracking.
stressful. Yeah.
Right.
It's like,
yeah. Didn't know anyone. It's interesting because you're in the United States, and I was like one of 3 people who lived in the United States. It was like actually hilarious,
right?
Really? Everyone's like international, like coming from all these countries, and I'm like, wow, you know what I mean? So like, it was cool. It was really cool. It was nerve wracking because I didn't know anyone, right? So you had to like get yourself out there, and like, you know how it is. It's like if you're, not doing, crazy numbers yet, like, it's not like you're a nobody, but it's like what kind of value could I get from this person, right? So I wanted to be the one who really like tried my best to grow my business so that I could provide back eventually, to others. So I wanted the reciprocation of value is like huge for me. Like, for example, like, these podcasts, like I would love to do these for you because, I see the value you've given for me, right? So that's the way I see it.
Interesting. And thank you so much for doing this, by the way. It's like, I think we've had conversations before, but I think we've probably done 1 or 2 before.
Yeah, we did a Zoom one, like it was literally the day after I graduated.
Oh, really?
So like I had a hangover day, and then we went straight into the interview and got after it. So yeah, that was so love doing these.
So your parents happy with you like graduating and
yeah. They were very happy. They were very happy. I felt like I owed it to them, and I really wanted to do this for them. So made it happen for them, and now I was like, okay, I'm gonna try this, and if it doesn't work out, we'll go from there. But here's what I'm gonna do now.
So let's say, so you were doing this in college, right? And you obviously had people like classmates and stuff like that who were also in college, and they could see your journey. They could see, for instance, that second year where you made like 200K. I don't know how, like, whether you were sharing with them like what you were doing, and like did you have people like reaching out to, hey, Bretten, like, shit, teach me what you do. I want to do this as well. Like, this looks so inspiring. I want to do this as well.
Honestly, no. Like, it was pretty interesting. I would work on it in like class because I had to, right? I kind of had to like multitask always. But they were interested in what I was doing, but they didn't want to pursue it. Whether it was like they saw it as like a risk, or they had a job lined up, or they wanted to pursue different ambitions. I'm not entirely sure. Like, I never really asked them why that was, but I've had a couple people be like, hey, like I'm helping a couple of my friends now, get their feet in the game. So but I never had.
Do you think that they're gonna make it?
Hopefully. If they I'm certainly giving them better knowledge than I had when I was getting in, so I would hope so. It's up to them at the end of the day how far they want to pursue it, and
because it's always fascinating to me that there's people transitioning from 9 to 5. Just earlier today, I had a conversation with Toppy, and like last year, right? He was working in he was working like basically at random jobs. Like in 1 year, he hit 2 million last month.
Yeah, he's like, perfect example.
Yeah, and it's like, and you're thinking, okay, so if someone in my circle is someone that I know personally, like, while they're working together, studying together, is doing something like that, you probably see like line of people trying to like, hey, what are you doing? Like, can you teach me? Like, I also want to do it. But as you said, it's probably like those limiting beliefs that people have, always like too risky, too much time, I don't have time, I don't have money, I can do something different. And it's fascinating to me.
Yeah. It comes down to 2 things, excuses and limiting beliefs. And under that is perspective, right? And that's something I take away from every mastermind is like the trajectory of a business is the perspective of that person, right? So does that make sense?
Can you repeat that?
Yeah. So the perspective of one, like, how they think and how they approach business
Of the founder.
correct, is the trajectory of that business, right? So if you think small, you make excuses, the business will reflect that, as opposed to you thinking large and ambitious, right? And thinking leverage, right? Thinking of these like approaches, right? Then, that's how you see people like Marek, that's how you see people like Topi, So it all comes down to perspective at the end of the day, like limit the excuses and limiting beliefs. And I believe anything is possible.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah, this is so good. Kind of this story that you have is so inspirational. That someone watching this, maybe still in college, if you're ambitious, hungry entrepreneur, just go for it.
Just do it.
Just do it. Like you'll figure it out along the way. Like for you, it was. Relatively, it was faster success because you've had success with that $800, the last $800 that you put in. I had a conversation with Simone, who's also in Mastermind. He was struggling for 2 years.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to say is that if you go after it, your journey could be different, right? So obviously, it's like for some people, it's working out faster. For some people, it might take time. But as long as you stick to it for an extended period of time, there's no way that you can't succeed.
You don't fail until you quit, right? So as long as you think like that, I think success is inevitable. I think too many times people look at the chances of succeeding, like what is the rate? Like 1% of businesses make it past 3 years or something like that. But like with the correct knowledge, right? You see 100% of these people in this room doing it, right? And you meet, a large amount of people doing it, right? So at the end of the day, it's like your mindset, your perspective translates into what you achieve and what you become, and honestly, the efficiency of it. So I can't stress that enough, how important it is. And to anyone watching, like I really hope you pursue it to the best of your abilities, and like you don't fail until you quit. So I literally can't stress that enough.
How big is your team right now?
I'd say 15 to 20. Yeah, I'd say around 20 people.
20 people?
Team. Yeah.
Like who do you have? Like designers, customer support agents?
Correct. Like resolution, like dispute team, Amazon team, Google, email. And those are all like departments. So they have like 2-3 people under them. A few VAs, whether that's for product launches or customer support. So have several members on the team. So yeah, it's grown.
So 1 year after graduation, you basically went from like someone who was supposed to get a job to someone who's providing jobs.
Yeah, I created a sales job for myself, and then learned. Transition one is like you start with a sales job, right? With e-commerce, like you learn how to sell, you learn how to market, then you need to transition it into a business. That's kind of phase 2, and that's the approach I took this year.
What were the biggest lessons when it comes to hiring that you learned the hard way?
Yeah, I think it's all mindset, right? Again, so the way I'll explain it is you need to understand leverage and what tasks produce the most output, right? So for me, it's meta ads and product launches, okay? And anything else not related to that, you need to delegate it. Even if they're doing it 80% as good as you, right? You need to delegate, right? Or else you're not thinking with leverage, right? So you have to delegate at a certain point. Yes, your expenses will go up, your monthly expenses will go up, but through time, your revenue will increase as well. So,
and where do you hire people for the most part?
I mean, it really depends on what level, it is. So like lower level, like customer support, responding to emails, you'll definitely go to like Upwork. I find Upwork to be pretty reliable. Even like my graphic designers, the complexity is not extremely high. So, same thing with Upwork, but like high level managers like LinkedIn, my Amazon account management team I got from LinkedIn.
You're looking at your business like very long term. You're looking to exit it one day?
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
You have a number in mind?
Yeah. Definitely in the 8 figures, that's the goal. We'll see. It's all up to execution though. So
for sure. So you went from $60,000 a year profit to like $500,000 profit. So what were the biggest things that you have done that allowed you to scale that fast?
Yeah. So, I mean, this year will be the best by a lot. And ultimately it was taking that step from phase one being like a sales job and phase two into like thinking like a business, right? So I first like looked at what we were doing right, our competitive edges, right? So for us, you know, it was product launches, you know, so ultimately we built an infrastructure around that to, at first we were doing 5 product launches a month. Now we have the capacity to do 20 to 60 product launches a month.
Like new products.
Correct.
So these are like in
Correct.
your niche specifically, like different kind of designs
Correct.
and stuff like that.
And not only are we sourcing them, we're custom producing them. So it creates minimal competition for us.
Wow. So you have like a moat around your business.
Correct. So that was, you know, my relationship with my private agent was my competitive edge in regards to financing. So we owned inventory like a business would, like an e-com business would, but we financed it like a drop shipper. So I could order 30,000 units right now and not pay a dime out of pocket. So my cash flow is extremely lenient that I could reinvest into product launches.
What allowed you to have those kind of terms with your supplier?
Loyalty. I expressed my loyalty to him. I was like, look, here's what I need if you want to 3x this business this year, and I need you to do this for me. And here's what I'm going to do to ensure it happens. And he took the chance on me. We agreed on exclusivity together. And that really helped out. So, you know, again, I looked at it, how can I, you know, turn it into a sales job into a real business, right? And so that was like that first step.
By sales job, you mean like initial when you're starting the business, it's just like the goal is just to sell products? Or?
Me just selling. Now it's like, how can I make it more lean? How can I enhance my bottom line? Looking at it like a chessboard, like a balance sheet, instead of like a revenue. You know what I mean? Like, how can I really enhance the value of this business without necessarily increasing revenue? Or how can I create better systems, or how can I create better relationships in order to obviously scale revenue 3x, but enhancing margins while doing so. So we're actually able to, triple our revenue while increasing our bottom line by 40%.
Wow, This is fascinating.
Yeah, and that was our biggest differentiator for this year.
How did you come up with this idea, or just came by accident?
So thinking of like, what's your competitive edge, right? And for us, it was product launches, right? So I built an infrastructure. I expressed my loyalty to my private agent, and then I built an infrastructure around that to sustain, 4 to 10x the amount of product launches we were currently doing, right, in the previous calendar year. And on top of that, I looked into ways to reduce my cost of goods, and that was a huge implementation for us. It was a big risk, biggest risk I took this year, because when you change your product, you potentially change the perceived value, right? So for us, I really studied my options, and I went with an option that was actually a better product material, but way more affordable. So we're actually able to lower our cost of goods by $6 per order.
Wow.
So well over 25%, like well over, like it's probably 50 to 60% we lowered our cost of goods. That was a huge change for us. And then, the material, the perceived value is a tiny bit lower, but the characteristics, the durability is actually much better. So it increased our acquisition costs minimally. Just 1 or 2 out of 100 customers, preferred a different, product material. And, but at the end of the day, it was a net positive because my cost of goods were so much lower and our acquisition costs only went up a tiny bit.
That is a big lesson for everyone watching who's currently running e-commerce business, to look at your cost structure, like your COGS, product costs, shipping costs. I don't know if you're going to China this year.
Next year.
No, next year?
Yeah, next year.
So yeah, I'm going to China this year, so we'll be like negotiating with our factories, just they're arranging the the product cost. We're negotiating on that side, and then also negotiating on the terms that we have. Because these are such big leverage points. You can't control the marketing costs. Like you can make it more efficient by creating better ads, but then another cost that is pretty much like fixed.
Correct.
Is your COGS.
Yeah, correct. I think an important note to hone in on is the fact that it's, as much as it is important to increase your revenue, it's probably more important, in my opinion, to decrease your expenses in a sophisticated way, right? And why I say this is because generally with economies of scale, as you increase your revenue, your margins will slim. But if you're able to look at your company, like a board game, right? And see where can I decrease certain areas while not neglecting quality, so that I can, with economies of scale, produce higher revenue with thicker profit margins. And so that was a huge approach we took into this year. It was a big risk, but we really did a lot of research with it and executed, and it performed extremely well. So with that change, we're able to do 3 times the revenue with very healthy margins, much healthier than what it originally was at 20%.
Because every extra dollar that you save on your product cost is a dollar that you can spend on acquisition.
Correct. Exactly. That, and to reinvest into, better people, different sales channels, et cetera. So it allows you to spend more per acquisition, which allows you to outbid your competition. It also allows you to reinvest into your business more effectively and more aggressively.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's like you're in one of these competitive niches that it's pretty small barrier to entry.
Correct.
Like almost like anyone can get started, selling products in that niche that you're selling in like today.
Yeah.
Like within like few hours. And when you're in those competitive niches, you have to find the edge that would allow you to be competitive in something that other people cannot have access to or they cannot afford. Like you mentioned, the relationships with your supplier. How did you develop those relationships besides just communicating? Like, did you see them in person?
No, I've just been working with him for several years. We built a great relationship together. We're very loyal to each other and, talk every day. I think that was obviously, a big thing, and he sees the effort. Like he wants to invest into me because of the effort I put into growing the business, right? So, we're a symbiotic relationship. We rely on each other. His business is also mine and vice versa. And he saw the growth potential within the strategies I was proposing. And, he invested in me just like, I do for him, right? With our exclusivity, my loyalty to him. So that's kind of why we made that decision together.
For sure. It's like, and it's one of those things that pretty much no one is talking about, right? Like people talking about the acquisition, people talking about Facebook ads, people talking about, pushing like different buttons, like if you want to grow your business. But this is something that as much as impactful, if not more impactful on your bottom line, on your ability to scale, at the same time, it's not many people are talking about this.
Yeah. I think it's extremely important, right? Like you said, gifting is pretty, not only is it seasonal, it's, competitive, right? Lower barrier to entry, but you need to, ultimately think of ways to differentiate. And I think if you actually look at it deep enough and you actually give it research and you don't just compete doing the same marketing angle, the same product, right? And you actually change it up a little bit and try to sell to a certain segment or change even the way the website looks, like small differentiators, pay dividends and really make you stand out. And I think if you do that in every front of the business, whether that's, for us, it's production, different materials, lowering costs. If you differentiate in substantial ways, we also have like I mentioned earlier, a custom theme, right? So our website looks completely different to everyone else's. If you differentiate in those small ways, it adds up in huge proportions.
And that comes down to, I believe that's like the reason why most people fail in e-commerce. Like even people that had some success, because they have gotten some success by modeling, not even modeling, oftentimes just copying other people. They just see, okay, someone is selling this product. Let me just copy their website. Let me copy their ads. Let me copy, just source the product from the same place where they're sourcing. But you're thinking like a few steps ahead. You're thinking like how we can, be more efficient here, be more efficient here, develop a system and process for this so you can have more output. And each one of these steps gives you like a small competitive advantage, but when they add up, all of these smaller competitive advantages, they become like a bigger moat.
Correct. I think people often in e-commerce are desensitized to the fact that we're selling to real people with brains. You know what I mean? So like all we do is like from an ad perspective is look at our ads manager and see ROAS. We're like, oh, sales, ROAS. But if you actually, take the time to understand that you're selling to real people with emotions and wants and needs, and you cater towards that and you don't give them the same BS that everyone else is doing, they will reciprocate that. They appreciate that. They value that, right? And they'll reciprocate that value to you and your business, right? And, and on another front, if your product's good, you have great branding and whatnot, you really care about your customer, they'll come back and they, it pays dividends. Like, customers reciprocate the effort you provide to them. So it's extremely important to like, for all e-commerce and aspiring entrepreneurs to like, not be desensitized to the fact that these are real people. I think it's extremely important to understand that.
How your mindset has evolved in these, since you started, was that the mindset you've always had, like looking for that edge, or that's something that you have like developed over time?
I think a little bit of both, right? Like I really took the approach of understanding what I was doing before executing, right? I didn't want to go in blindly. I had minimal resources in terms of money. So I needed to make it work, right? So this was my second store, the brand that I'm still working on. And I, like you said, it took people 2 years, right? And it took me the same amount of time, but I spent the first year watching YouTube videos. Okay. It actually took me 2 years to get off the ground and get something successful, but it was my second attempt because of the research I took, just by understanding my minimal resources, right. And executing, and adjusting to that, so yeah, I mean, it's extremely important.
Yeah. We've had this conversation just, recently with, one of our clients, Austin. He has this, pretty like unique product. He had like last year he only made like $37,000 or $38,000 in e-commerce sales, and then he joined ESS like in 2 months. He basically scaled to over $160,000 or $170,000 per month. But he was able to do that because before he did that, he talked to a lot of his customers. He sold the product to them in person. He was getting their feedback. He would improve the product based on their recommendations. So before he got started with all of the Facebook ads, with all of the nitty-gritty, with all the tactics, and we helped him, kind of dial those in. He had the great foundation of, he had a good understanding of what market he was getting into, what language he had to speak to that market, what are the pain points of that market. And his messaging was just so dialed in that he was able to scale like very, very fast.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. And I think it kind of reflects back to the point I was making earlier. It's like if you care about your customers, they'll reciprocate, right? They want to see that you have effort, you care. You're not, it's important. Like I don't look at the dollar amount I make. I look at the 5-star review, and that's what I care about. I care about the 1-star review so I can improve, right? If you actually show genuine care and attention to your customer, they'll reciprocate. And it's funny, I was actually speaking to Austin last night, and we were talking a little bit about his business, and there's some key levers that he hasn't even implemented yet. Yeah. So in a month or two, he's gonna be doing a lot better than he is now. So yeah, it's kind of crazy.
That is like 8-9 figure easily that he's sitting on.
Easily. Yeah. No, I was like, you're not doing this yet? He's like, no. I was like, you're not doing this either? Like, I asked him, like, what are you doing? Like, come on, like, let's think logically here. And he's like, yeah, he's about to crush it. Yeah, even more so than he's already doing.
And it's interesting that, for people listening to this episode and listening to your story, I think the best way to do it is just like pull different things from different people, right? And then identify which path is the most applicable to you, right? So let's say you learn from your approach, you learn from another person's approach, and take these nuggets from different people and identify which approach would make the most sense to you in particular situation, particular circumstances. Your business is at a particular level of scale, right? So even like, for example, with your business right now, when you get to 8 figures per year, you'll have different set of challenges, right? When you get to multiple 8 figures, you'll have a different set of challenges. When you get to 9 figures, you get a different set of challenges. So on every stage of the business, there's different things that are applicable and not applicable to your business specifically. And it's important to have that critical thinking and pick up the things that are most applicable to you instead of trying to like, okay, here's like 300 different things I want to implement. I don't want to implement them all at the same time.
Yeah. There's always growing pains, and each business has its own context. So it's really important to talk to people, get their perspective, and kind of apply it to your business, right? The way you imply or impose your strategies in your business may not work for mine, right? So you need to be attentive to how your business operates in the context of your business, right? In order to fully execute, instead of just like what you said, rapid fire testing, trying 300 things, right? You need to like think analytically. You need to be decision oriented and narrow focused, right? Narrow focus on high leverage opportunities and understand the context of your business and replicate what has worked and implement those thought processes, those lessons learned, and have consistency with that, if that makes sense.
For sure, yeah. It's like, for example, if I recommend to people, we're heavy on VSLs, advertorials, direct response marketing, but if you would try that, probably that wouldn't work for your business specifically, right?
I've tried it.
Yeah.
Didn't work. Tried the whole, funnel thing. Like I said, business has context. Like, for some people, funnels are the way to go. Funnels are what is, increase their bottom line, like the approach I took this year, right? So I took a different approach, but got the same result, pointing back to what I said earlier, each business has its own context, and what works for you may not work for me. So, you have to think critically.
For sure. Bretten, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for the trust you put in us, like in me, like, years ago.
Of course.
Thank you so much for coming to these events year after year after year after year. Like you keep coming and you keep, providing value to other people here, like keep learning, keep evolving. And for me, it's very fascinating to see your evolution, like as a person and also as a professional, as an entrepreneur. So thank you so much for joining me. And when do we meet? Will you do 10 mil this year?
Next year.
Next year?
Yeah, next year.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you do 10 mil, we have another conversation.
Yeah, we'll have a party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's make it happen, my man. Thank you so much.
Thank you.